Yes, welcome to my presentation, and I will introduce in some kind of complexity of application in Apex and try to make these complex things a little bit more easier. This presentation is held in English, and that's only because we have many people which speak different languages, and in my opinion, it's much more easier to gain much more people. So because of that, I'm talking in English. If you have, besides this, questions, and perhaps also questions in German, please make them or ask them. I can answer that in the presentation or perhaps afterwards. But first, let's introduce me. My name is Oliver Lemm, and I'm working since 10 years now for my company. We're located in West Germany, so perhaps, so most people know who we are. And I'm working now also for 10 years with Apex itself. Before I started with Java and found then my way to the company, and now I'm working for 10 years with Apex, and I'm still happy with it and enjoy the fast change of new technology things which are even introduced in Apex itself. The next thing about our company, of course, you can talk to us at our presentation stand here in the middle of the room, or in the middle of the center room, and feel free to ask if you have special questions or any other things, perhaps also not related to Apex itself. We have many knowledge people focusing on many different topics. But let's go to the conference presentation with what means the truth. For me, it's often hard as a person who gets different applications to know what the mean of the application is. So sometimes I'm thinking, okay, there's a new application or even a very old application, and I really don't know, is it hard to maintain? Do they make many special things, customized things, or do they create many pages? Are there many JavaScript-related things or more PLSQL stuff? And what is it related to this application? Does it have interfaces or any other stuff which could, customized things could make it hard to maintain this application or even to understand this application? And of course, I'm interested what components are used. So if I'm not confirmed with the newest version, and perhaps I can't handle with interactive grid things or Oracle Jet, it's perhaps of big importance to know that these components are used, or even not used. Or in some special kinds, some applications like to use plugins. Perhaps some plugins are not tested or not well known, or if I make a next migration to the next version, some plugins will break. These are many questions, and often you have to work for your first time, perhaps as with a new application, at the beginning alone, because some other people didn't have time. They didn't have any people who created this application at the beginning. Or on the customer side, there was other consultants which are not there anymore, and you have to answer your questions on technical level, perhaps, for you alone. And that's the problem. And finding out how the structure is, how the pages are related, and the application itself, how it's built, it's often a good thing to be fast at the beginning, to know a general approach of the application. And afterwards, of course, you have to look into the pages and in detail. But if you get a feeling at the beginning in very fast time, it's much more easier to talk about it, to make things like migration stuff and how difficult it should be, and all this thing. And of course, sometimes it's also interesting who changed something and when it was changed. So there will be perhaps a company who has an application, and they will ask us, okay, please, we would have new features in our application. And at the beginning, the guy who's maintaining, or not really maintaining, but who belongs to that application says, yes, I don't know when it was changed, sometimes 2-3 years ago, and there were 4 or 5 people, but I didn't know in our company it's such big and something like that. And we can then use an application like this, or general the metadata, to find out who made changes and where was it changed. So my motivation is to have some answers on these questions and to make it a little bit easier to understand what you are using. The next thing, I created a small application related to this presentation, and at the end of the presentation, we will see this as a live demo. And but we have different people who are asking perhaps other questions, who are interested in different kind of things in the application. You have the database developer. Perhaps he's interested in which objects are related. Do we have some database links? Do we have a special kind of structure or something like that? The next people are perhaps the professional Apex developer itself. He makes many customization things, templating, special things, which are not out of the box in Apex, and he's interested, is there something already done? Is there big customization, perhaps in the theme roller, but furthermore, created more templates? And also some people like cloud developers. They are perhaps interested in interfaces, in special tables. Are they available with JSON or other stuff which is not directly connected into the application, but other applications can ask for this data? Of course, if you have a team, then it's easy to talk about the application and show, okay, this 4 pages, a high amount of JavaScript, a special kind of functionalities in there. That's your team. Please use these guys to maintain these areas. And of course, perhaps the project leader, that he gets a feel of, okay, we created an application of 100 pages, and how hard is it special parts to be adjusted? Because some pages need 10 days to develop, some other 1, something like that, and that's many, many questions, and many, many different people are connected to it. What are the general questions at the beginning, or what are we interested in to solve? At first, yeah, we are interested in the complexity. So is the application real complex or not? Do we have standards, or do we have any other special things introduced, as I said, like plugins, like customization? How many dynamic actions, and where are the dynamic actions, and all this stuff? Because if the page will be rendered, you are struggling about, okay, what will happen? And then you change something, and you didn't directly know why is it changing, and how is it related. The next thing, recording also to, in comparison to complexity, transparency means that often some pages are not rendered on full for every people. So there are some people which are seeing a top region, a lower region, and another region, and other people only see one region. These things sometimes are at the beginning a little bit problematic, because you don't know why is someone seeing it and why is the other one not seeing the region, or why does one can push the button and the other not. And these questions, or these things, in my eyes, to make it more transparent, make it easier to understand how it works. And if you're alone, you need something like that. Otherwise, you have to read code, go through every component, look into it, and it's annoying and costs much time. And at the end, of course, you need perhaps some tips about functionality. Which objects are related and what do they do? What are you calculating? Perhaps not in every detail, but in general. Okay, can we divide the complexity, in which parts can we divide it? On the one hand, we have, of course, the APEX components. Every region and every page, and all the things which are directly created over the page designer or internally with the browser. These are the APEX components. They can be complex, and there's a huge bunch of things, items, and different kind of stuff. Of course, the next thing is the PLSQL objects. You know, you have some special things like perhaps triggers and some other things which are directly related, but you don't see it at the beginning, perhaps. And that's, yeah, also of big interest. The next thing is the JavaScript thing. Of course, we know that, or there's a possibility to use dynamic actions, but we have, if the application will grow, always some special JavaScript which are on a central file, or which is defined on a site level or on a region level. And that's not using always, or it should not use always dynamic actions. Sometimes it's easier to make it in another way. But it's hard to find it out. Because if you're searching for something like that in your application, what are you searching for? Searching for a special term, for a special thing? If you know it, okay, you will find it. But if you don't know it, there are many different points where the code is in there, in the region, in the page, inline CSS and stuff like that. The same is related, of course, with the CSS. And yeah, at the end, of course, also the database objects in general. Yeah. Okay, the next thing is the transparency aspect. Transparency means regarding to which is changed or who changed something. When was it changed? Sometimes it's good to know that a special functionality was introduced in a time, and then if you talk to people who are using this application and said, okay, we made it a change request for this special feature, and because of that, the functionality changed, then you can say, okay, it was introduced in that time, and it's easier to look onto other things which are changed at that point, perhaps to find an error, to find a change. The next thing, the conditioned elements thing. As I said, if something is not shown for one user and the other user can see it, it's hard if you run over the application to see directly who sees something. And that means, yeah, getting more transparency into the application. And at last, the related page thing, that you know which pages are related, who will I go when I click a special button, or what is the relation between the things. And at last, from the features, you have the functionality aspect. You have, of course, the page function itself, saving, loading, special functionality, calling perhaps application processes things which are not directly visible on your page, but they will be run. Every time you call the page, you don't see it directly in the page designer, but they create something, they make something. And it's really hard to feel it, or not even to feel, to guess what changed my data sometimes. The application logic, yeah, as I described, it's the application central things. And at last, of course, also interface stuff. We have customers which are interested to have special schemas or stuff like that to be filled with data if someone changes data in the application. And sometimes it's hard to say, okay, this special process or this application will fill the other interface. And these functionality aspects are then interesting. Okay, perhaps you could say, we have APEX and there are some features integrated. We have the possibility, on the top, the red thing is an application search. Okay, so if you know what you are searching for, a special table name, a special column, you can use it, click it, and it's really good way to find perhaps a special package thing or a special JavaScript if you already know the name. The next thing, the green one, if you are working on a page and the page will grow up, sometimes the normal search or the general search will, in normal case, make a model dialog or a model, not model, a normal dialog to search for the things. And the page search, you can directly search inside your page without anything to be submitted. It's really fast, and if you change something in your application, it will directly not be anymore in the search result if it's not matching. You don't have to save, and it's really a huge thing, and I would, say use it, and it's really of high productivity thing. And another thing regarding the transparency aspect, of course, is the history. So if you're using history information, you get, a bunch of information who changed something. But an important thing is, in that case, that you only get the information if you're on the developing area. So if you export an application, import it to another environment, the history will be really empty. And that could be a problem if you're interested in the special thing, what changed and who changed it. Yes?
Do you have to activate the history, or is it loading automatically?
It's automatically. I think you can define something like how long, but in standard it's activated, and I can't say how long it. Yeah. If you change something on the page, changing the label, changing that item, it will be shown in a list here in an interactive report, as we know. Okay. So the next thing, okay, we have more utilities to answer these questions I have. We have the application utility thing. So if you're going to the application builder and choose one application, you can click utilities and you get a bunch of information, but it's divided into special areas, and we are another time searching in the application. If you would like to develop and search, sometimes you need then a second browser, because otherwise you perhaps get a little bit struggling, searching in another old application, changing in a new application, and then sometimes it could happen that you save the wrong page. And because of that, it could be not so easy to use all the stuff, but it's in there. Another thing is, of course, the cross-application reports. If you are changing some applications, perhaps making a migration, it's always good to have an old version of the application in the same workspace and have the possibility to compare two applications. So another time a good feature, but another time a different area in your page designer or in the app builder itself. And the last thing I would also mention is also if you are looking onto the database objects, what changed, what's related stuff, and where's the data, you have also the SQL workshop area where you have also some information. The problem is, or why I did like to solve this problem is, this information is separated. Sometimes I'm also wondering, okay, was it a cross-application utility or a general utility? Is it workspace level or an application level, or is it in the page designer? And I think some other people perhaps struggle also sometimes. And even if you know where it is, you have to click 4, 5, 6, 7 other clicks, and then you are there. Afterwards, you go back, and it's not directly related. So you get no overview, and you need, as I said, perhaps another browser to not be changing any objects in the wrong space or in the wrong application. And sometimes it's not so intuitive to work with these different screens. And that was the idea, okay, it should be easier. Let's go. So at the end, we will see it in live. I have some screenshots in there. And here you can see, at the beginning, I'm interested to get an overview how many page types and which pages do we have in the application. So at the beginning, perhaps you're asking, is it an application which is only perhaps reporting or using some special chart stuff? Is it an application where you maintain the data? What are the types of the pages? And there you get a feeling, okay, some static pages. Of course, overall, there's much more information in detail, but you get the first view, okay, that's related to the stuff. The next thing is, I will point up different topics, and at the end, you see them in the live demo in which areas I bring up these topics on an interactive way using the Oracle chart thing, or the JET charting. So we are interested if you are maintaining an application, of course, which theme is used. Is it subscribed or not? And nowadays, we have the universal theme. And if you make any changes and it's not subscribed anymore, or you break the subscription overall, or sometimes even on special templates, keep in mind, these templates have to be maintained the next time, another time, if you break the subscription and change these templates. And because of that, the question is really of huge importance to know what is changed and where do we have some changes or extra changed. And of course, perhaps it would be interesting, how are the template options? And what about the theme roller things? There are only some questions. As I said, I would give it an overview, and we have some metadata regarding to these topics. You see in the blue area, and template regarding these topics. The next thing is the PLSQL thing. You see, we have many different points in the application where we can use PLSQL as code, and on every level, it can interact, of course, with your application. And that could be a problem. I'm don't interested in going to every point here. But you can perhaps, if you're self-interested in different points, use these some views and make an overview for you. And sometimes I think it will not be so easy. So that's the next point. JavaScript. Yes. A big thing is, over the years, JavaScript was used very differently in APEX. At the beginning, we didn't have any dynamic actions. So every JavaScript we have to create for our own. If someone of you used perhaps APEX in version 3 or earlier, you used jQuery for your own. If you then would go to APEX version 4 or higher, you would be getting some problems because also APEX then used jQuery. And other areas which are now possible. So, for example, we have the page onload code in the application on every page, and other areas where you can predefine special code only with JavaScript. In earlier days, we didn't have these areas. So code was on top of region level, or sometimes on top of page level, or even in the template itself. It was a problem. And when we went to the newer version and migrating stuff, some people perhaps didn't migrate it, all the JavaScript code. And there was also perhaps some external files, and all these questions are related to the topic, where is my JavaScript? And because of that, it's an important thing. The CSS is the same. We always had, in earlier days, no area to only use CSS. And nowadays, we have special things like, of course, the template option thing overall, but also we have areas on page and on region level where only CSS can be used, and it's much more easier, of course, to find and a better way to use it. But in older versions, we didn't have it that way. We had it on region headers and all the stuff divided in application. The thing who changed, where changed, and something like that, we get it that information on nearly every view in the APEX repository. So every question can, of course, be answered, but there are many different points at the end. And we are interested to get it in an easy way. So let's go to the live demo and make it a little bit more interactive and take a look. Okay, I hope you can see it. Perhaps I can enlarge it a little bit. So I created a small application. This application doesn't have any own special tables or packages logic in the schema. At the moment, I'm using 4 or 5 self-defined views. That's because of the big SQL statements regarding searching the repository stuff. But at the end, if you can use in near future this application and import it into your workspace and get the information of your objects and your applications. I'm not using here any predefined stuff. I'm not filling any tables for that. I'm only searching on the metadata which is already there from APEX. So on the left side, I have some points I described what I'm interested in. At the moment, the application, it's not fulfilling and answering every question I answered, but are giving some answers. And in my eyes, the thing about the jet charts is a really good and easy way to find and aggregate some information and make it much more easier to understand. You have here an application where you have, as you can see, different components in the shared objects area, and you have a really big bunch of list of values. Okay, let's take a special look then there when migrating that application. Perhaps we can migrate in that way that we can define some pipeline tables or other stuff. Or you have to, of course, be careful of changing some of these list of values. And the next thing, so on the right side, I decided to use the template which was given from the APEX team to make a special pane, which is viewable and can be zoomed out and zoomed in. And you can look into several applications. So define a small application or define, let's look here on other stuff. Oops, once a refresh, sorry. No CSS in this application. JavaScript, only overall 160 things. And what about the pages? Or what is it compared all pages to each other? I think there's a refreshing thing. No, it's not. So you get an overview which application is fulfilled with what amount of data. You can, of course, look into special things, to, define which you are interested in, and to always use these special lists to configure all the charts in the middle. I made it because some of the charting engines, and of course Jet also can do it, to click into the several charts and change the other charts. It's a cool feature, but it's not so easy at the beginning to use. And the other thing, the problem is always, if you click in several charts and refresh other ones, you're struggling about what did I filter, what did I change. You have to really be careful how the things are related. And because of that, I said, okay, I would be interested to use select on the right side and then refresh the thing. I don't know, he seems some problems about refreshing the things. But it's really a good way to find out which components are related there. The next thing was, if you have only a small application, it's possible to see how many different things are related to this application. So the components per page, or the components buttons to which pages are they related. And you can also filter on the page and to see how much items, dynamic actions, and something like that. So it's much faster to walk through the application and to get a feeling of how it's related and how it's working. The next thing is the visibility. Often in projects, as I said, we have conditioned or defined many different things in the application. We are using the build option thing. We are using normal conditions. We are using some read-only stuff. And we are using perhaps some dynamic actions to not be, or to visualize something or to make it not readable. And here you can see how many of the overall pages, regions, and items are conditioned. So in that application, nearly everything is readable every time. And therefore, the funnel was a good way to show up. If you then use another application, then you can also see which conditions are related to that. So you see the code, what is related to this condition, and sometimes even some never things are related there. And then you get feeling, okay, I have to go to these special applications and look into the several things and how it's used. The last update thing, perhaps filter on one page, and then you see on which day something changed. I made it last week, some changes on this application, and you directly can see what pages are changed and where did I change the page, what is the CSS changed, and application was changed, a native refresh thing, and you always get the information which is only in a table in normal case, in a graph, and it's much faster to get the overview over the changed things. Let's look into the template thing. Perhaps let's pick an application. On the left side, you see the templates overall. So we have items which are used, buttons, and all the different types of application items which we use in every application. On the right side, you see the customized ones. So the amount is how often it's used. It's the reference count. And of course, here you see the type and the name. So if you're adjusting many templates, as I said, you could be in trouble going to the next version. And you perhaps sometimes didn't know, is it used often? Of course, you can go through the different templates and filter an Apex and go to the point another time. But it's an easy, fast way. And if I change something in an application, it will, of course, directly affect the metadata. And you directly see on this area that something changed and will be not filtered anymore. So it's the live data based on Apex. When we look into perhaps a sample chart thing, we see that curious way that some of these templates are adjusted. And yeah, it would be interesting to ask the team, because I think the most things like sample charts could use the standard universal theme and not to adjust the templates. But in normal case, you only have the information which are really adjusted. Okay, let's go to the next area, to the JavaScript. If you have an application, it's often of big interest which application page is related to special JavaScript code. So on that chart, I choose here the D3 bubble chart because it was a little bit easier and faster to use than the bubble chart from OracleJet. At that point, I used it. Perhaps I will talk to other people, then you could also choose the OracleJet thing. I think it wouldn't be any problem. But you can see on a nice way how much code of JavaScript, that's the overall code number, is used on a page. And if you are going through the different simple dynamic actions or any other place, you can see directly the code. So if you are searching then for JavaScript in your application or even on a special page, you get these dynamic actions and you see the code, what is happening there. It's a good way, and of course you can use to filter some out. So for example, if you, okay, that's not mine, that's not the interesting stuff, and I'm focusing on other stuff. And yeah, it was also curious if you have a bigger application, where's the code related and what is the code? And even with the know-how of the application, which I'm maintaining over the years, it was interesting to find out which areas of JavaScript were in the product. Even I would say, okay, don't remember where we use it, but it's in there. Perhaps we can remove it. And it makes perhaps some problems will be solved by that. Or even if you have some code which you are searching for, and you know, okay, on that page, but yeah, you don't have to walk through the several regions. If you're yes, it's easy, it's fast, it's a big amount of data. I also used once to test the Apex Page Designer, but the Apex Page Designer was so huge. In most areas it worked, but of course it was a little bit hard to read everything. It's so much then in that case. We could aggregate it more. And yeah, another thing is interesting. If you have code in your application, perhaps the JavaScript code, you see to which components is it related. So in normal case, I would say many code lines of JavaScript should be in a central file and sometimes be called on a dynamic actions. Of course, we have some page load things, where we call it, and some special areas, but I try to round it up in a file and then call it only the small call things which doesn't have a big amount of code. But you see it, we have here page as a dynamic action native code, 2/3. And then the other areas are the JavaScript code on page level. Okay, it's fine. And of course, also the JavaScript code onload area. It's also defined for JavaScript. But then we have areas like buttons. And the buttons, something like redirect calling JavaScript using a special logic. And that's really of high importance because, yeah, otherwise if something like that doesn't work, the user won't be able to reach the application. So if you are going to look at that, okay, there's some special logic which are calling before the button will submit or using any other stuff. And yeah, the old areas, as I said, page, HTML, and the onload and the header thing, that should be removed over the years. And also the things like, yeah, in the region footer. This code should be not anymore in the region code. So we will go to the next version, fix or pick up these special things, and fix them to centralize it, to make it much more easier to maintain. And of course, the same thing on that area with the CSS thing. Here you see the application has one special page with a big amount of CSS code in there. Of course, we have the theme roller code, which is much bigger than I can explain here. Because of that, I said not available. Perhaps it could be possible and it could be scrollable, something like that. But I'm only showing it. So this thing is something like, okay, in normal case, that's not the big important thing. And the next thing is, here we have JavaScript code, which is related to the big page. That's, yeah, as some people said earlier, don't write such big functions or such big areas, or if they are such big, place them perhaps in the central file to make them easier to maintain. And because of that, it's possible now to use it the way. The problem was, as you see, if you have something like header text or region footer text, how is it identifiable? Because if you have HTML, what are you searching for? There could be something, so I started with something like the CSS, and of course the style tag, something like that I used, and the special areas only regarding to the CSS things, and bring them all together and show them all as a result here, what CSS and JavaScript is used in application. At the end, sometimes I had problems because mixing up CSS and JavaScript, both in the HTML area, that's okay. I would say that the numbers sometimes then are not the exact numbers of CSS code or JavaScript at the end, but it gives a feeling and it helps you to find it out and to summarize it, how it could be findable. Okay, any question at that point to the application? As I said, the application itself is not ready yet. It will be in summer ready, and I will introduce some more points. So 4 or 5 points are on my list. And do you have a question to a special area or a special answer or a special thing? What should be in there? Okay, yes, that's a good question. So it could be really cool if you make the possibility to link directly into the page designer or into that area, that you can directly fix it based on the application here. But it could be sometimes a little bit curious because then we are switching another time here. So it could be an enhancement, but at the beginning I would say, okay, it's a little bit separated. It should be refreshed when I change it in the application, but at the moment I make it divided. And a big advantage is here, if you have some not experienced user with Apex, and you say, okay, know how that application will work, log into the environment, and perhaps he's at the beginning struggling because didn't know how the page designer works. So he didn't know, okay, which page do I have clicked, where's the attribute? And perhaps something like that should describe it. Okay, JavaScript, oh, yeah, I know what JavaScript means. or CSS or the PLSQL thing, and where's it related? And afterwards, he can say, okay, that page I have to go, and on that page, it should be anywhere. So introducing APEX could also be easier with something like that. Okay, let's go the last seconds to the slides. So, yeah, it will be interesting how far it will grow, and I think I will place it on GitHub, and at the end you will have one application, only import this application, and at the moment it will create 4 or 5 views. I'm not sure whether it's at the end also creating the views. Of course it will ask, install supporting object, yes, no. And I think views should be a normal case. Okay, I hope that no people are not struggling because of these 4 or 5 views. Otherwise, the code in the application itself would be growing enormous big. And sometimes it would be cool for you, perhaps, to use only the views and say, okay, I don't want this application. Give me the views. He aggregated it fine way. I don't know use anymore. Then I'm finished. Thank you for your audience. And yeah, feel free to contact me or our company. Thanks.